Hello. Yeah, I'm Miguel Arias from Master. Thank you for very inspiring stories also from Jose Maria and yourself. I was wondering, Jose Maria seems to be doing business in almost every sector, every country, every business very successfully. And you seem to be much more focused on maybe classified business or where you are an expert. So as an entrepreneur, you think that you should be going for any opportunity where you feel that you see you have like a gift for opportunities, or you should try to have a passion for something and be an expert in something?
That is a very interesting question that reflects what Taleb, the author of the Black Swan, calls the survival bias. People look at me, they see the businesses where I'm doing well and are still alive, and say, "Oh, he only focuses on that." That's because my failures don't show up. I've lost a lot of money on things that are unrelated to classifieds. So the easy answer is, I don't do other businesses because I've lost money whenever I depart from the things I know. So I know a little bit, and only a little bit, about classifieds. And I would say that I know about classifieds having to do with real estate. So I am with Idealista. I also have an investment in Top Rural, which is rural houses, with Rentalia, which is vacation rentals. I'm with 11870, which is a kind of classifieds. But I lost money investing in a friend came to me with a restaurant network. It seemed that it was a very good idea for salads, something like pret-a-porter. Lost money there. Another friend came back and asked me to invest in a hotel in Rome, in a very nice hotel, luxury. I said, well, you cannot lose money investing in hotels in Rome. Well, you can. I lost money there. So I've lost money on many different ventures. Nothing that I couldn't survive. One of the interesting about, and this is more about investing, which is interesting. I think that my point of view is that if you have some money, it's better to invest part of that money in 20 ventures and 20 different things, and having some of them fail and having some of them succeed. The ones that fail, you can amortize them as if you have an investment vehicle, you can amortize them through taxes. So you lose that money, you don't pay in the taxes that you have paid on the ones you win. So the important thing is to make some of them which are winning. So if you invest on 10 things, 5 of them win big, 5 of them lose, you are okay. If you invest on 10 and the 10 of them lose, bad business. But you have to invest. One of the things that also people tend to forget is that if you keep the money and you invest very safely, you make 3%, you say, oh, I'm successful because I haven't lost money. But if you have invested properly, you could have made maybe 20%. And people don't consider the 20% to the 3% a loss. But that's a loss, compared with what you could have made, on a reasonable business,
Thank you for your speech. I want to ask, first of all, how the economic crisis affected you personally and Idealista. And also, do you think that after your failures, you've become more immune to handle with such a crisis?
I will start with the second part, which is also a very peculiar idea that we tend to have, that, if you go through some very difficult periods, you become stronger. Mm-hmm. I always, when you look at the pictures of, people coming from the concentration camps in 1945, I don't think they came back stronger because they have gone through very difficult periods. I think that when you go through very difficult periods, you become weaker and you become scared and you become, more wary of risks. So I think I prefer to live beautiful times than to live tough times. So I don't consider, hardness a blessing. I think that hardness is, bad. So I prefer to run a nice business, go sailing, skiing, and having a nice life than, going through a lot of hardness. And the first part was, sorry?
How the economic crisis affected you personally and Idealista.
In Idealista, I've lived through 2 bubbles. I went through the dot-com bubble in the early 2000 to 2003. That was horrible. You were also around. Anybody that was around, at the beginning of last decade running internet businesses, that was a really, really, really bad time. People tend to think that internet would never make money. It was impossible to find any money for that. And at that moment, I was looking for funding for Idealista. Idealista required 6 million euros from 2000 to 2003 before break-even. And getting that money when there was no venture capital money in Spain, when there was a huge distrust of internet, was really, really, really difficult. I remember clearly a moment in January 2002. We were still 1 year behind break-even, but of course at that moment I didn't know. I just knew that I had been looking for money, and last quarter of 2001 was impossible. We have 9/11. All the investors that I could have found, totally disappeared, and the moment was coming up, and I was sitting in my desk. This was January 2002, and I knew I didn't have money to pay the salaries at the end of the month. I basically knew that it was impossible. And I was negotiating a credit with my banks, which was a bridge credit to be able to finance for the year. It was on very difficult terms, because they would basically take the money if we miss a single payment. It was very difficult. But on the other hand, for the banks themselves, it was also very difficult to approve, because the risk committee had to approve extending a line of credit to an internet company. And internet back in those days meant worse than porn, something on the level of arms dealing or drug trafficking. No, seriously, you laugh, but internet was it was like the worst that I would go to investors and they would tell me, with a smile, say, "Oh, I'm sorry, we don't do internet here." It's like I've had meetings like that. We don't do internet, like we don't do porn or casino. And I was working on my desk, and I have to work on these two levels. On the one hand, I have to keep looking, what price we put to this product, how do we do with that, how do we do this, and I was waiting a phone call from the bank telling me whether the deal had gone through the risk department. I was so stressed that I had broke up with my partner 1 month before that. We broke up because I was really, a jerk. I was so stressed that, it was very, very difficult. I was in a very bad mood. And well, fortunately, I'm here, so you know that how the story ends. They called me and they said, we approved the line of credit. That year we reached break-even. We paid the line of credit immediately. All the money that they got went straight into paying the debt. And we could continue when many of our competitors went bankrupt. The good thing was that when the real estate crisis came, we didn't have any debt. Idealista hasn't had any debt. We have, zero debt. We don't even have a revolving credit or anything like that. Even though from 2005 to 2008, banks would want to put money in your underwear, like if you were a dancing girl or something, banks would come to you, do you want a credit, we'll give you any amount you want, really was amazing, the way banks would want to give you debt in 2005 to 2008. So when the crisis came, I immediately noticed the change of sentiment. And in 2007, when we first heard about the subprime crisis, people talk a lot about September 2008, when Lehman went bankrupt. But at that moment, we already had 1 year into the crisis. It's only that people didn't want to say it, but we were already 1 year into the crisis. So I stopped hiring people in 2007, and I had to fire a third of my company in 2008, 2009. That was very difficult. It was very, very, difficult on the staff morale, on adjusting activities. I have 5 offices. I have to close 3 of my 5 offices and concentrate on 2 of them. But the good thing is that we maintain margins. We always stayed profitable, and we still grew the bottom line, the EBITDA. Even though we didn't grow on sales, we grew the EBITDA, because we reduced costs tremendously. So now I think that we're in a very good shape. In 2010, we have grown over 2009. 2011, we are growing over 2010. Good margins and safe and stable. I don't think that we are in a crisis anymore. I think that the crisis passed, and what we are now is in a new normal scenario. This is what it is, and it's not going to change. If it changes, I think it will change for the worst. I don't think it's going to, but many people don't want to accept that we live through a bubble. And we are still hoping like, oh, when are we going back to that bubble? It's like, we are not going to go back to that bubble. That was a bubble, and bubbles disappears. So this is the real scenario now. This is what it is.
Thank you.
Hi, this is Prem, and thank you very much for your pitch. I think it was great in terms of kind of bringing up from the cloud and coming back to earth and seeing what is the reality out there. My question is still like, being that the outworld for the entrepreneur is so hard and so tough at the end of the day, is there a trigger? Is there something that tells you when you're starting? I mean, I'm not talking about kind of investment, like you said, you can invest in 10 companies, but if you're going to go your full-time on something, in your personal opinion, is there something that you see that, yes, this is something I have to go for? Is there a trigger? Is there a light? Is there something that tells you, yes, this is it?
I think that the main draw for many people for not being an entrepreneur is this idea that, oh, but my quality of life would suffer. People try to become an entrepreneur, and they try to have an opportunity that will maintain them on the same quality of life as they had before when they were a consultant or a banker or whatever. And what you have to understand is that being an entrepreneur is a lot of cold lunches, a lot of sleepless nights, not being able to travel to nice hotels, forget business club travel, all of those perks that you have when you work in a corporate world, that you have when you finish your MBA and you go to work for a big consulting firm, they're over. Because then you have to, maybe go back to your parents' house, cheap travel, cheap food, because you don't have the money. And you are looking for money, and no investor is going to give you money if they see you have a nice, high quality standard of living, because this guy is not hungry. So I think that, to me, the trigger was that I could see. I mean, if you look at society, if you look at the world today, and you look at the demographic curve of most of the developed world today, what you have to accept is that we will not have pensions, not at 70, 67, 69, or 72. We will not have pensions. And, and companies will fire you when you are 55 or 60, because, you are not, as young and dynamic as, strong. So if you want to have a safe bet, if you want to have a low risk strategy, you have to be an entrepreneur. It's paradoxical, but most people think that being an entrepreneur is very risky. No, being very risky is being an employee. That's the risk, because then, 20 years down the line, you will be very expensive for the company. You will not have a net worth. You will not have the assets to sustain you when you are old. So I think that the safe bet is to be an entrepreneur. Now, it's very difficult to do that if you have a mortgage when you are 25. You have a mortgage for 30 years. How are you going to be an entrepreneur? So I think that we have priorities upside down. We leave a university, you get a huge debt to pay a falling asset. Why? Because all of societies does that. So that's why I say, don't do that. It's much safer to start your own company. Do something small. Make sure that if you fail, you can do it again. Hedge your risks, but play it safe. Be an entrepreneur. So